The Salem Signal, Episode 2, The Dead Frequency. Welcome back to the Salem Signal. If you've returned after our first episode, thank you for listening. I wish I could say that tonight's story is easier to explain than the last one, but it isn't. In fact, the more we've investigated, the stranger things have become. Over the past week, we've received hundreds of messages from listeners. Some thought our first episode was simply a fictional horror story. Others weren't so sure. A surprising number of people claimed that they have experienced something similar. Most of those stories were impossible to verify. One wasn't. The message arrived just after midnight. There was no subject line, no greeting, and no signature. Attached was a single audio file. There was nothing written in the email itself. Normally, messages like that would be ignored. Anonymous files appear on the internet every day, and opening them isn't usually a good idea. But curiosity has a way of winning. The recording lasted just under 1 minute. At first, it sounded completely ordinary. Static, the kind of background noise you hear when an old radio isn't tuned to a station. There were a few faint clicks and pops, but nothing unusual. Then, around 30 seconds in, everything changed. The static became quieter, not because it disappeared, but because something else had entered the recording. Breathing, slow, steady, almost as if someone was standing just inches from the microphone. The breathing continued for several seconds before a voice quietly whispered a sentence. "Don't answer channel 13. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't distorted, it sounded calm, almost like a warning. When the recording ended, I replayed it several times. Every time I noticed something new. Tiny sounds hidden beneath the static, what sounded like distant footsteps, doors closing, wind moving through empty streets. It was impossible to tell whether any of it was real or simply my imagination. The next morning, I decided to look into the recording. The email account that sent it no longer existed. The domain had never been registered. The IP address led nowhere. Every piece of information that should have identified the sender simply didn't. Then I looked at the metadata attached to the audio file. According to the file, it had been created in April of 1984. That would have been unusual enough, except the digital audio format used for the recording wasn't introduced until decades later. Both things couldn't be true. Yet they were. I assumed the metadata had simply been altered. That explanation would have made the most sense. At least, until I spoke with a retired radio engineer from Salem. He asked not to have his name used. He told me that in the early 1980s, there had been rumors along local radio operators about a mysterious signal that occasionally interrupted normal broadcasts. Most dismissed it as an interference. Others refused to talk about it at all. He claimed there was an unofficial nickname for it, the dead frequency. According to him, the signal never stayed active for more than a few minutes. It appeared without warning, it disappeared without explanation, and anyone who heard voices through it was advised to turn off their radio immediately. I asked why. He simply answered, "Because the second message is always meant for you." I laughed. He didn't. Before hanging up, he asked me this question that caught me off guard. "What time did you receive the recording?" I checked. 12:13 a.m. There was silence on the phone for several seconds. Finally, he said, "It always starts at 13. Then he ended the call. I wish the story stopped there. It doesn't. 3 nights later, I was working late in the studio, organizing notes for this episode. The building was completely empty. At least, I believed it was. Without warning, the lights flickered once. My computer screen froze. The digital clock in front of me stopped changing. 1:13 a.m. At first, I assumed the power had failed. Then I heard something. Not from outside, not from another room, from the headphones resting on my desk. They weren't connected to anything, yet someone was speaking through them. The voice wasn't loud. It was barely above a whisper. It said, "You listened." Nothing else. Just those 2 words. I removed the headphones immediately. When I looked back at the clock, it was running again. The lights returned to normal. My computer restarted on its own. Every file was still there, except one. The recording from last night. It had disappeared completely. No recycle bin, no backup, nothing, as if it never existed. For the next few days, I convinced myself I had imagined everything. After all, I haven't been getting much sleep. Not getting enough sleep plays tricks on my mind, especially. Stress can explain strange memories. Logic has an answer for almost everything. Then another email arrived. This one had no attachment, only a single sentence. "You shouldn't have listened alone." I tried replying. The message bounced back immediately. The address had never existed. Again, that's when I decided to search through old newspaper archives from Salem. I wasn't looking for ghosts. I wasn't looking for monsters. I was looking for facts. Buried inside an article from the summer of 1984 was a small paragraph. It mentioned temporary interruptions affecting several local radio stations. Official blamed equipment failure. Nothing unusual, except one sentence stood out. Several residents reported hearing voices on inactive frequencies before service was restored. No explanation was ever published. The incident disappeared from the news just days later. No follow-up, no investigation, almost as if everyone simply agreed to stop talking about it. Since beginning this investigation, strange things have continued to happen. Several listeners have reported hearing unexplained static immediately after finishing our first episode. Others have claimed their clocks briefly displaying 1:13 before returning to normal. One listener said every radio station in their car suddenly went from silent for exactly 13 seconds during the drive home. Could all of these stories be just a coincidence? Oh, absolutely. Could suggestion and imagination explain many of them? Probably. But there's one detail I can't ignore. Every person who contacted us described hearing the same sentence, not similar words, not the same meaning, the exact same sentence. Don't answer Channel 13. None of them had shared their stories publicly before contacting us. None of them appeared to know each other. Yet they all repeated those exact words. Tonight, before recording this episode, I checked our inbox one final time. Waiting, there was another anonymous message. No subject, no sender, no attachment, just one line of text. They're broadcasting it now. I've read that sentence dozens of times. I'm still not sure what it means. Maybe it's a prank. Maybe someone enjoys watching people chase mysteries that don't exist. Or maybe every time this story is told, the signal reaches someone new. If you're hearing this episode, I have one request. If you ever find yourself scanning through old radio station frequencies late at night, if the static suddenly becomes quiet, if you hear breathing, or if a calm voice tells you not to answer Channel 13, listen to the warning, turn the radio off, walk away, and whatever you do, don't answer. This is the Salem Signal. Until next time, stay curious, but remember that not every mystery wants to be solved.